Good morning. I'm Wendy Patton with Policy Matters Ohio, a nonpartisan, not-for-profit research organization with the mission of contributing to a more prosperous, inclusive, equitable, and sustainable Ohio. We thank Representative Ramos for contributing mightily to this through this legislation we're discussing today. In 2016, the state of Ohio plans to waive time limits on federal food aid in 18 mostly rural counties where the economy lags and jobs are scarce. This is a good and compassionate policy choice, but thousands of poor Ohioans live in places that also qualify in the same way for a waiver of time limits on federal food aid, and the state has failed to extend the waiver to them. The state has excluded 3 counties and 12 cities that qualify for this waiver of time limits using precisely the same methodology used to request an exemption for the 18 counties that have been granted the waiver. Further, if the state used a slightly different approach and grouped counties in regions, 34 out of Ohio's 88 counties and the same 12 cities would qualify. We congratulate Representative Ramos and his colleagues who are working to expand federal food aid to all hungry people in Ohio. As we've said before here, the federal rules place time limits on food aid for adults who aren't elderly or disabled or in custody of their kids. It limits it to 3 out of every 36 months unless they can find enough work, about 20 hours a week, to meet the federal work requirements of the program. The federal government waives the time limits where the economy lags. Ohio has many pockets throughout the state where the recovery never came. Here, people of all ages struggle to get consistent work. Many are hungry. The federal rules make allowances for places like this, and Ohio needs to take advantage of the federal rules that exist, as Representative Ramos's legislation will ensure. Now, in terms of the excluded cities, 12 Ohio cities are eligible for the waiver under precisely the same calculation made for the 18 that got the waiver. And these include Cleveland, Dayton, Lima, Lorain, Mansfield, Maple Heights, Middletown, for parts of Butler County, Toledo, Trotwood, Zanesville, Youngstown, and Warren. These cities had unemployment rates at or above 120% of the national unemployment rate between January of 2013 and December of 2014, which is the threshold used for the waiver and the months used by the state to calculate eligibility. Cities have been excluded for the past 2 years since Ohio rejected the statewide waiver. In 2014 and 2015, Ohio accepted the waiver for rural counties, requesting the same rural areas again, although 70% of those who lost their food aid because of this exclusion of the waiver live in urban counties. The exclusion of cities means many African American, Asian, and Hispanic Ohioans who live mostly in cities were subject to time limits on food aid. In the summer of 2014, Columbus Legal Aid filed a civil complaint against Ohio based on the state's rejection of the waiver in cities, which disproportionately harmed minority populations. Headed into 2016, the state could have redressed this inequity. The Kasich administration chose not to. We did ask the Department of Job and Family Services why these places were not included, and the response was administrative. We administer it differently. It wasn't that the federal rules prevented them from doing it. Under federal rules, a state may request a waiver for not just counties, but from multi-county areas. They can request for cities. Many states do waive eligible cities: Rochester, New York, Knoxville, Tennessee, St. Louis, Missouri, South Bend, Indiana, Green Bay, Wisconsin, and Providence, Rhode Island, for example. The administrative barriers are manageable in Ohio. Concern about properly identifying whether a SNAP participant lives in a waived area can be addressed under our system. There are funds, should the legislator choose, to ensure that the administrative capacity would be there to ensure hungry Ohioans to receive federal food aid. And the resources for the food aid itself come completely and solely from the federal government. Now, in terms of excluded counties, Benton, Trumbull, and Muskingum counties were exempted from the waiver request that the state submitted, although they are at 100 or over 120% of poverty during the 24-month period the state requested. As I explained in my comments, there were Trumbull and Muskingum County had rates that round to 8.1%. The state, for some reason, acted in a manner that was not consistent exactly with the federal requirements. They rounded to 2 decimal points. That may have had something to do with the decision, but both of those counties, Trumbull and Muskingum County, have unemployment rate during this 24-month period of 8.1%, which is 120% of the federal rate. Benton County is more of a mystery. Their unemployment rate is much higher than 120%. The state's response to our question as to why Benton County was not included was simply Benton, Ross, and Hocking counties merged their departments of Job and Family Services into one administrative entity, serving the residents of all 3 counties. There are ways around this to feed hungry people. This is an administrative barrier not linked to any federal prohibitions. And indeed, if the state took a more regional approach, almost all the Appalachian counties could be included in the waiver, including Hocking and Ross counties. By grouping counties and using a regional tally of unemployment, federal food aid could be further maximized in Ohio, as per federal rules. Up to 34 counties and 12 cities would be eligible, including almost all Appalachian counties and many cities. Thank you for your time. Happy to answer questions.